Yeah.
All righty. Welcome everybody. It's that time again. It's good to be with you, Arnie, isn't it?
It's great to be with you.
There's a lot going on in the world, but I don't know about you, but last night I watched basketball back to back to back. It was the most exciting basketball I've seen in the March Madness season. And I must tell you, you wouldn't be surprised. They were all women's games, right? Princeton loses in a heartbreaker. Belmont loses in a heartbreaker. Ohio State cleans up for sure. Notre Dame blows them out. I'm telling you, the games were just amazing. I will tell you on the men's side, just to be totally and absolutely transparent, I'm in for Duke. I cannot resist the emotional opportunity for Coach K, who is just an amazing guy, to win his last national championship. Anyone feel any different than that? Come on, Yale's already out. Tulane doesn't have a chance. Like, who do you want, Kenny?
I want Zona.
I'm a Pac-12 girl, as you know. That's where my son went to school. Do not want Arizona.
I don't know if any of you saw it, but Sunday night, it was the late game on Sunday night. The Arizona TCU game.
Yep.
One of the greatest games, not only of this tournament, but past tournaments. And how Arizona survived and advanced is pretty amazing. I'm with Kenny. I think this is the Wildcats' year. I think they're going to be tough to beat from this point. But unbelievable. It was some great games.
We'll see. Well, tonight we want to welcome everybody. We're going to talk college basketball. We can talk about a couple of other things, of course. We're so grateful to have Rafi Goldman with us and Matt Elkin and Jason Belzer, and I'll tell you about them in a minute. But as you know, one of our guests has been Bruce Pearl. He certainly is a shining light when it comes to NCAA basketball coaches, as well as far as a coach representing the Jewish people, he's all out there on it. We know that since the last time we've been together, I believe there's been certainly a change in the world and what's going on in terms of what's happening in the situation in Ukraine. I don't know how many of you saw this yesterday. Kenzie, if you want to get this, but this is a clip of Bruce Pearl getting asked a question yesterday, or 2 days ago, maybe 3, at his post-game press conference. And too bad, he just got signed for $10 million and they lose in the first round. It's a good thing he signed before that. Here's Coach Pearl. That's okay. You always got to have a pre-roll.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, Henry.
Great. A bit outside the box.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah, I gotcha. Sorry about that. This is a bit outside the box, but Tara Vanderveer, the Stanford women's coach, said the other day that for every three-pointer made in the NCAA tournament, she was going to pledge $10 to the Ukraine war relief efforts, and she challenged other coaches to join her. I'm wondering if you had heard about that at all, and about whether you'd like to join or maybe even one-up her.
Well, I sort of feel like this is a calling from up above because, this week, the Jewish people are celebrating the festival of Purim. And, Purim is a celebration of what Queen Esther did. Queen Esther was with the king of Persia in the palace, and she was Jewish. And Haman was a very close advisor to that king. And he was advising the king that maybe it was time to get rid of all the Jews. Queen Esther's uncle was Mordecai. My Hebrew name is Mordecai. And I think that my family gave me that name for this reason. Mordecai talked to Esther, the queen, and said, look, Esther, you might survive this for a little while, but you won't survive this. He's really going to kill all the Jewish people and your family. And he gave Esther the courage to try to see if she could turn the king's heart, and she did, and saved the nation. So some of you may be uncomfortable. You guys asked the question, right? You asked the question about Ukraine. We say never again. I was born in 1960, 15 years after they opened up the gates, and they saw 6 million Jews who were murdered and 3 million more people And so if Tara Vanderveer wants money for 3-pointers, I'll up whatever they're offering. I'm in. I'm all in. Help the Ukrainian people survive that. And I'm very concerned about what's going on in Iran with the king of Persia now. And if we embody that government, give them all that money, sign a bad treaty, it's going to put the world in jeopardy.
Okay, so we're not here to talk politics tonight, but we are here to celebrate a Jewish coach willing to talk about the Jewish people, willing to share the story of Purim, which I loved. My Hebrew name happens to be Esther. So, you know, maybe I should get together with Bruce. We can be Esther and Mordecai, and we can like recruit if there are any like Achashveroses out there. But I know that you had something to say, Arnie, about this in particular that you wanted to share.
We're here tonight to talk college basketball, but I think it's appropriate just to take a minute. And first of all, to thank many of you that are on the screen tonight, your support through Maccabi of Ukraine. There are efforts going on all over the country. I think many on the Zoom know I have both a professional involvement and a personal involvement because we have family that are in the Ukraine right now. And I can tell you it's a very bad situation. And, you know, the number of people, which are now in the millions, having to leave their homes and evacuate to other countries without their loved ones, and seeing the devastation that Russia is causing on this country and on the Ukrainian people is heartbreaking. So I would just want to say thank you to everyone. If you have not given to the Maccabi Ukraine relief effort, please go online, take a look at it. I know that all of the leadership, Don and myself included, would be very appreciative of your support. And God willing, hopefully this conflict will end in a positive way at some point in the near future. So let's move on to something a little bit more positive, which is college basketball. Donna, you wanna start, or you want me to?
Donna, let me introduce her. I guess Matt.
Okay.
I'm sorry that Yale is not in the tournament, but you did get to the dance. So let me introduce everybody who's with us. We have 3 fantastic men this evening. Let's start with Matt Elkin. Matt, I always appreciate how you reach out, and I do appreciate all those emails you send us. He started as a student manager, and I believe Rafi, you started as a student manager, right? Jason,
I did.
Did you start as a student manager?
I did not, no.
Okay,
I started as a student athlete.
All right, well, you're out. Sorry, you're done. So we have 2 student managers and a student athlete. Okay, so Matt was a graduate manager at Northeastern. He was the varsity assistant coach for Vermont Academy boys basketball. He was Windward School boys basketball, yes, and then ultimately ended up at Yale's men's basketball. You're their Dobo, right?
Correct. Yep.
Director of basketball operations. Dobos have to know it all, do it all. And as you said so poignantly, we only know how good or bad you are when things screw up, because no one appreciates you when it goes all right, right?
Yes.
Right? Okay, now we have right here, Rafi Goldman, also a student manager. You're at the University of Nevada.
Vanderbilt, then
Nevada as a video coordinator, correct?
Yep.
Says here you were a video coordinator at the University of Nevada. Great. Moved to Tulane as a graduate assistant. I think you must have overlapped with you must have overlapped with my son. Zach was there. And now you are working for Under Armour, yes?
Yep, on the grassroots basketball side.
Which is really incredible. I want to hear about that, especially because they are a challenger brand in basketball, even though they have Stephon Curry. So it'll be interesting to see what the basketball wars are like on the ground, especially from your point of view. And then, of course, we have Jason. Don't you like it when everything gets printed on both sides? Jason Belzer, welcome, Jason. You played basketball, yes?
I played college football at Rutgers.
At Rutgers. Okay. You are the founder of the Jewish Coaches Association, yes?
Yes.
To being an agent,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know that you founded GAME, which is really a cool thing, career management, marketing of coaches and sports executives. So you're really an entrepreneur in this space. I don't know what your end game is. Maybe you should share that with us. But right now you're very involved with NIL. And I think that's another part, Arnie, of our conversation. Name, image, and likeness. as the Wild West prevails in college sports. So Arnie, I used to give you the first question because it works well that way. So you want to write it?
All right,
Everybody prepare your questions. We'll be monitoring the chat as we go. Arnie, it's all yours, babe.
All right, I'll take it. We'll obviously cover a number of business type of issues, but I'm going to actually start with Matt because it's not every day that somebody gets to be selected for the big dance and play in that first weekend. So Matt, I just talk a little bit about your experience with Yale, what it was like to win the conference tournament, how excited, were the kids and the team to be able to move into the first round, and just what was the environment like? I'm not sure when Yale was last in the tournament, but I know it doesn't happen every year, and the Ivies, I guess, generally get one, sometimes two teams in. But what was the experience like, and what was the feeling winning the tournament?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for everybody that is tuning in. I'm really excited to be here. And to your question, Arnie, for us this year in particular was special because last year during the pandemic, the Ivy League was the only league in men's college basketball Division I that decided they were not going to play games. So we had the entire year off last year. And leading into the pandemic, if some of you will remember, the Ivy League was actually the first league that basically said, hey, this COVID thing is getting pretty serious. We don't want to proceed with kind of our Ivy League tournament and beyond it. And a lot of leagues and pretty much the entire world followed suit. So heading into 2019, we were actually the Ivy League regular season champions. And so the season went on pause. We didn't have an opportunity to head to the NCAA tournament that year when it was canceled. And all of last year, we didn't get a chance to play. So this year was especially great for our players who decided to come back because they had been waiting for over a year for the opportunity to get to the NCAA tournament. So for us to go to the Ivy League tournament as a number 2 seed, win our semifinal game, and then also win the championship game over Princeton, who was favored in that game, to be able to cut the nets down and earn an opportunity to go to the NCAA tournament was, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. But luckily for some of our seniors, this is actually their second time getting a chance to go to the dance. So just an overall incredible opportunity for us. We got a chance to play Purdue, who, as many of you guys know, and as I can see in the chat, we have a lot of Purdue fans, but a really talented team. And we just love the opportunity to showcase Yale University as more than just one of the best schools in the world, but also a great basketball program. So was really happy that our young men got a chance to experience that.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Donna?
Did you want to follow up with Rafi, Arnie?
Yeah, we could talk. Let's do that. Rafi, my Tulane University, New Orleans contact here. It's great to have you on the show. I'm going to actually throw this to you, but I'm going to leave it for others as well. NIL is clearly one of the biggest issues in college athletics right now. But I want to ask about another area, especially in basketball, that's changed the landscape totally of the game, and that's the transfer portal. It's football as well, but definitely basketball. Rafi, talk a little bit about that. I mean, is it good or bad? Do you like the way it's set up right now? And from a kind of a coaching administrative standpoint, it creates a lot of uncertainty after a season and sometimes during a season. How do you deal and cope with that?
Yeah, I don't think the transfer portal is necessarily good or bad. I think also there's a lot of things happening at once, right? You have all the student athletes getting an extra year of eligibility because of COVID. The year in residence where you have to transfer and then sit out is no longer a rule. That's happening at the same time. And the NIL stuff is happening at the same time where student athletes can now earn money on campus, but there's other opportunities to go play overseas, play with the Overtime Elite League. There's a lot of factors going on at once, but I think freedom of movement is great for the players. Very much I've always thought that they should be able to move around just like the coaches do. Is it a challenge for coaches in terms of roster construction year to year? Yeah, but that's what they get paid to do. So I think there's definitely demand for older kids, whether it's JUCO, transfer, kids repeating a year. I work on the grassroots side of things now, where it's become increasingly difficult for high school kids to get recruited. More and more kids have to come with the reality that they're going to go to junior college. They're going to do a post-grad year because college coaches don't want to spend the time developing them physically. They'd rather get a ready-made product. So their jobs are on the line year to year. And is the transfer portal good or bad? Who's to say? I don't think it's either. But I think coaches get paid to construct a roster that can win games every year, and they have to face the challenges. And it's really, really hard on the players, especially for the high school classes of 2020 and 2021, who didn't get those evaluation periods during the spring and summer because coaches couldn't be on the road. That really set them back a lot too in terms of opportunities to be seen, and fewer scholarships available with the extra year of eligibility. So I feel for those kids. I don't necessarily feel for the college coaches because constructing a roster is part of the job. And if you can't adapt with the times, just like any industry, you're going to get, left behind.
Wow. You're not, let me ask you a question. Rafi, do you hope to go back onto a college staff at any time? I mean, do any of you have coaching aspirations? Curious.
Yeah, so I took this job, I just finished up as a graduate assistant at Tulane. I've been working with the Under Armour guys for a number of years, dating back to as an undergrad manager. It's tough to go from support staff to being an assistant coach. So I took this as an opportunity to build relationships and recruiting for a few years and then get back in. That being said, I'm loving this side of things. I love the sports business side. I recently took another side job with a company working at the cross section of NFTs and NIL. We just did a drop with UConn men's basketball. So really enjoying that side of things as well. And the plan has always been to get back into coaching, but right now I'm torn. I would never say, no, but right now it's not the only thing on the table.
Right. So that's a good segue to the sports college business. Jason, you said you're a football player. But you came out, you've started all these businesses, including the Jewish Coaches Association. I'm just interested from an aspirational vision point of view. What did you want to accomplish? Like where was your North Star as you came out of playing collegiate football?
Yeah, so I knew pretty early on that I wanted to represent coaches. I wasn't interested in representing athletes. And I had an opportunity when I was in college to intern for a very successful broadcasting agent by the name of Steve Hers, who at the time we worked with two college coaches who were doing broadcasting in the off season. One by the name of Seth Greenberg, who had just got into Virginia Tech from South Florida. The other, Bruce Pearl, who was still at Milwaukee. And I had an opportunity to meet these two guys that were Jewish and were coaching, and I loved college basketball. And I said, I want to represent people like Bruce and Seth. And so when I graduated, I started my company. And because I knew Bruce, we had the opportunity to launch the Jewish Coaches Association together almost 20 years ago now, probably about 17. And we have been able to build it. And as of today, there have never been more Jewish coaches, head coaches at least, in college basketball than we've ever had, which is really awesome. We had another member of the tribe last week get a job. Well, so two members of the tribe. One was already a head coach, Todd Golden, of course, at San Francisco, is now at Florida. And then Mike Schwartz, who I represent, is the new head coach at East Carolina. And Mike's story is incredible. If you want to read about it, his mother was a Jewish, she immigrated from India. She was a Jewish refugee, Sephardic Jew from India who came here as a refugee, moved to Los Angeles. And he, talk about a really, really interesting story from that perspective. But, my path has been representing coaches. I work with about 50 coaches throughout college basketball and football, majority in college basketball, a lot on the men's and women's side. And then I started what is known as the College Insider Tournament, now as the College Basketball Classic, which is actually being played tonight. UTEP and Southern Utah are playing. I started a media company called D1 Ticker, Athletic Director U. Some of you guys may be familiar with it if you follow college sports. We basically report the news to everyone that works in sports. And then I launched a company called Student Athlete NIL Sunil about a year and a half ago. And we are working in the name, image, and likeness space. We have our premier event. I dropped a link there that's in June, which is the NIL Summit. We're bringing several hundred student athletes from around the country to Atlanta for what we hope will kind of be their convention. And then we are also working with a number of universities to launch collectives. So tomorrow, actually, we're launching a collective with Penn State. So some of you guys may be Penn State alumni or supporters. We're launching that, and there'll be a lot of news to go with that. So
I think we've got Arnie, I've heard NFTs, I've heard NIL, now I've heard about launching the collective. I would assume that there's many on this call that are not familiar with those terms and what's going on. I would assume that there are many on this call who actually like to talk about basketball as well. So before we move on, let's do that, and we'll go back and forth. How about that? But Jason, why don't you just share with everybody what a collective is? Because right now they're probably one of the more powerful, both insidious and yet supportive financial tools that schools are using. So why don't you give us a little more insight on what they are?
yeah, so, and you used the word insidious, which is interesting.
And supportive. I use both at the same time. Just let you know.
Sure. So there's some good apples and there's some bad apples. So basically with name, image, and likeness, student athletes can now make money from doing endorsements, autograph deals, pretty much how you and I can go in and do anything that we want to make money from it. Collectives have been starting to form, basically groups of alumni at different universities are trying to find opportunities to help student athletes. So with Penn State as an example, and I'll drop a link, sneak peek for you guys for the collective that we're forming. What we are essentially creating is a sports marketing agency for every single student athlete at Penn State University. And so if you're an alum of Penn State or Rutgers or wherever it is, and you want to be able to get an autograph from the student athlete, you want to maybe have that student athlete come and teach your son or daughter how to shoot a jump shot. It's not easy to do that, right? How do you get in touch with them? How do you set that up? That's what the real purpose of a collective should be. What we are seeing, though, is that collectives are beginning to use this as an opportunity to entice recruits by putting a whole bunch of money into a pot and then telling a student athlete, well, if you come to Tennessee, which has happened this week, we're going to give you a couple of $1 million to go do a whole bunch of things that nobody really knows what you're doing. And that could be seen as an illicit recruiting tool. That's obviously not what we're about and what we stand for, but that's what we're beginning to see. And so between the transfer portal, which Rafi talked about a little bit earlier, and NIL, the recruiting game in college sports has changed. And you would be naive to think that not every major college basketball program is deeply involved in name, image, and likeness right now. Coach Pearl, Coach Krzyzewski, even though he's on the way out, they are all involved in this because this is the new era, right? Student athletes can make money. And so when they're thinking about, do I want to go play for Auburn or Duke or UCLA, it's factoring into the decision how much money they may make off the field that goes along with the opportunity to go play for one of those institutions.
Arguably, it's on the field, but we can come back to that, right, Artie?
You know, Donna, it's such an interesting topic and such an important topic in sports today that you really can't ignore it. I want to ask two questions, and I'm going to, you know, for any of you, any of the three of you. One is, you know, how do you see NIL affecting kind of the non-revenue sports, and as young people make decisions to go to a school to play whatever, soccer, volleyball, you know, how much is financial and NIL entering into those decisions from what you're seeing on the ground at universities? And then the second thing, I think this is very confusing, is when NIL started, it seemed like every state in the country felt the need to regulate it. They passed state laws, they were restricting it, and now you're seeing just the opposite. You're seeing all of those laws, not all, but many of those laws being rescinded so that it basically is kind of a free market again. Can you talk to that and why that's happening? And is that being driven because Alabama, for example, doesn't want to have a restrictive state law when Louisiana might be, more open. Is that the reason? So if you guys could talk to those two topics.
Yeah, I think I can hit on both of those. So in terms of the law, in July 1st, so 8-9 months ago, when the laws passed, states put laws on the books to allow their student athletes to monetize name, image, and likeness. And because the NCAA's hand was forced due to the Allstate case, they couldn't stop states from doing it. So they had to pass basically a blanket rule saying that as long as it's not pay for play, you can allow your student athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness. What happened, though, was the majority of states didn't have laws on the books yet. So now you had a state like Florida or Alabama that had a law with restrictions, and then you had a state like, let's say, Utah that didn't have any laws. And so BYU can do whatever they want, and Florida can't. And so, of course, there's disparity, right? BYU is helping do deals for their student athletes. Florida can't do deals. So Florida is in a panic. They're calling their legislators and they're trying to rescind that process. So that's what we're beginning to see. And it's basically free market capitalism. That's what's happening in NIL, which is a good thing, right?
No, go ahead.
To transition to that.
Go ahead, keep going.
So the NIL is actually going to hopefully save non-revenue sports. And I'm going to give you a great example of this. At Penn State, we have a donor who has given us a substantial amount of money. He wants to support a non-revenue sport that he played at the university. And so what we have been mandated to do is to go to the student athletes on that non-revenue sport, most of them who only have a partial scholarship, and figure out how much money it would make to get a full scholarship. Let's say, just say they need an extra $15,000 a year to cover their tuition, and create opportunities and jobs for them to earn that $15,000 to be able to have a full scholarship. So literally in 2 months from now, you're going to have a whole bunch of student athletes who were not on a full scholarship, maybe a quarter scholarship, who are essentially going to have the opportunity to make up that money, and they're in a non-revenue sport. And goes for males and females. We're talking to donors in women's volleyball and soccer who want to do similar things, which is amazing. And that allows the school to continue to invest into the program while also essentially having fully funded opportunities. So there is money. I think there's been this misconception that money is shifting from the schools and going to the student athletes. What we have seen on the ground is, in fact, the pie is getting bigger. And when the pie gets bigger, everybody benefits. The school benefits, student athletes benefit, and the alumni are getting an opportunity to engage with their favorite student athletes in a way that they wouldn't prior to this.
And
yeah,
if I think just
go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Rafi.
What I was going to say is, some of the highest potential earners in college athletics actually come from non-revenue sports, right? If you have, you turn on the TV, you might know a guy on Duke men's basketball, but if he has 10,000 followers on Instagram, isn't very engaged, doesn't have a brand, a personality that he can sell, there's probably a girls lacrosse player with 150,000 TikTok followers who's pretty engaging, and brands want her more than they want the Duke fifth man who is pretty boring, right? So it's a marketing tool, and a lot of these student athletes in non-revenue sports are great marketers and are very, very engaging on social media. I think, like what Jason talked about with a lot of these, university-wide NIL projects, it's really going to help all sports. And it also, in terms of athletes wanting to engage with projects, like, for example, ours on the NFT side, is the more you engage, the more it sells. And that's whether it's an NFT, whether it's a commercial for a product, or just an athlete endorsement. And I think,
Rafi, can you share what an NFT is with everybody? I don't want to make that assumption they know. Okay.
Very, very good question. So NFT is a non-fungible token. On the athlete side, you can think of it like a digital trading card. What is really unique about an NFT is ownership is easily verifiable and it's easily transactable. So we can, layer whatever utility we want on top of that. If it is an experience with a student athlete, if it's autograph memorabilia, once you own that, and also, majority of revenues are going to the student athletes. So, a lot of people, for us, when we first launched the project with UConn, I think 90% of them were first-time NFT buyers. They still don't know what they bought, a lot of them, but they know they're supporting their athletes. So it's, for us, it's about messaging as a player's first project, and knowing that no one, it's about getting money in the athlete's hands. For them, while Jason talked about, you can't entice them to go to a place based on, this amount of money waiting for you. They're going to ask in their recruitment what projects are in place at the university, right? So for us, it wasn't just player 1 and 2, it was player 1 through 14. You look at the walk-on, he still made some money. It's obviously less than, the leading scorer, but people are going to ask what projects are in place. And I think something we've run into at a couple of universities is the development office at each school, the fundraising arm of the athletic department is concerned, hey, well, if all this money is going to the athletes, how are we going to pay for our new stadiums, our new buildings? But like Jason talked about, it's about growing the whole pie, not slicing off, the donations from here to go to the student athletes. Everybody can win, because if you're having that stuff in place, you're probably getting better recruits. Everybody's winning, more money's coming in overall. You're still going to pay for your new locker room, your new stadium, and players 1 through 14 can still have more money in their pocket to enjoy their college experience.
Matt, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in as well that, a lot of the opportunities that Rafi and Jason are both discussing also pertain to in the general public, when it's a player is advertising a car, or you see them on TV, and so they're a popular player and they're making a ton of money, and this can be really helpful. But at a place like Yale, it might just be the opportunity that a player can run a basketball camp that has 10 kids at it, and they can make a little bit of money. One of our student athletes is a very talented artist, and he makes great pottery. And so just the fact that he doesn't have to be restricted as far as he can say, hi, my name is Matt Elkin, and this is a vase or a bowl that I made that I want to sell. That's the NIL and student athletes earning money off of their talents and their name and their image and likeness. It has a wide variety of opportunities that are available at the big scale, and also for people that just want to be able to do what they love to do and not get a slap on the wrist or get punished for it.
A pottery making basketball player is the most Yale thing I've ever heard.
I think that onto huge dollars for that person. Huge, probably more minutes. Let me ask you this: on the Jewish Coaches Association, we all love the Jewish Coaches Association, and you mentioned we have more Jewish coaches, head coaches, than we've ever had before. Off the top of your head, Jason, do you know what that number is?
I think we're close to 8 or 9, maybe even 10. Obviously, Bruce, Josh, Mike Schwartz, Rob Senderoff, Todd Golden, Keith Dambrit. We have Jen Gross at UC Davis. Who else do we have on the Division I level?
Coach Pasternak, Aran
Ganot, yeah.
Passner and Schurtz.
Shirts, yeah. Passner and Shirts, yeah. So that's 10 right there.
That's great. How many? So I'm just curious. Is this for all Jewish coaches, men and women?
Yeah. So So the short answer is that anyone can be a member of the Jewish Coaches Association. It doesn't even have to be basketball. Our meeting, which is next Saturday at the Tulane Hillel, everyone's invited who's going to be down at New Orleans.
One of the best Hillels in the country, for sure.
We're looking forward to it. It's at the men's Final Four. That's where we've started it. But we've had coaches from the women's side come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I want to do this and be part of something. So it's really just getting people involved. And Logan Bells, who's not here tonight, is an administrator. I think we're going to have a nice administrator presence next week as well. There are a lot of Jewish administrators. We know that, right? There are a lot of Jewish general managers, front office executives. So it's all part of the network.
And you guys include high school coaches into the JCA, don't you?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. All divisions of college. I actually had a student manager message me on Twitter asking if we run an event at the women's Final Four, and if not, can he get involved in trying to help bring an event similar to what we've been doing? And so, the more people we can get involved in the Jewish Coaches Association, like Jason said, it's incredible. It's an incredible community that we've built and continue to build.
And that's great. Rafi, I have a question for you, if I could. Now that you're on the ground floor, or what I mean ground floor is you're on the ground advocating for UA, Under Armour, right? What's it like having to go up against Nike and Adidas, and how much of it is a money game?
That's a good question. So also to clarify, I work for the company called 3 Steps. So we run all of Under Armour's grassroots events. I'm not an Under Armour employee per se, so I'll lead with that. Definitely different business models. I mean, for us, we had probably 4 of the McDonald's All-Americans this year. 2 from our UA Rise platform. So it's definitely a more holistic approach. Where at this point, Nike's chasing top talent. Adidas will go after single teams here and there. We're chasing more programs and building from honestly the middle school up. We started our girls Under Armour platform in 2019 was the first year, and I think we had 8 or 9 McDonald's All-Americans in year 1. With Paige Beckers, AZ Fudd, 4 from one team alone. So it's definitely it's challenging on the player side, but we're not necessarily prioritizing individual players to the extent that maybe some other brands are. We're going after teams, programs, high-level coaching, parity amongst the league. But yeah, I mean, there's still our fair share of, top 50, top 10, top 100 recruits.
But how does that work? Do you approach a team and say, we want to be your sponsor, and then you negotiate?
Yeah. So on the high school level, we have 2 tiers. We have our UAA, which is our sponsor teams. Generally, year to year, those end up being the same programs. In terms of attrition, it's probably 3 or 4 programs. But we, the last few years, we've been calling them up from our UA Rise, which is our second tier, where they're paying to be there, they're buying the gear. We like to promote from within. And then we have our middle school platform, where those teams are evaluated to graduate up. And we're actually the only middle school platform with the shoe company officially attached to it. Nike and Adidas have their affiliates, but we're the only brand that really puts the brand stamp on the actual league. So, we start from the bottom up, reward programs, and you're betting on program directors and coaches to get it done.
Okay, but you have Paige Beckers, right? The women's player of the year last year. Is she still in Under Armour?
She's not. She is not. So obviously she's with UConn. Once they graduate up, we're not necessarily chasing to only sign the players in our league. Our job is to run the grassroots events. The UA corporate side is the one signing the individual players. I see. I may have some thoughts on that, but that's not my job. So our job is to execute on the grassroots side and tee some things up. What they decide to do after that is up to the brand.
So I don't know about you, Arnie, but I'm kind of curious as to our guests' picks. We have 16 teams left. What do you think? What about you, Arnie? Who are you rooting for?
I've already told you. I think Arizona is going to win it all.
Yeah, Zona.
Maybe I tell you what. Save your picks, the 3 of you, for the very end in about 15 minutes, so that the world can. Otherwise, everybody's going on to their casinos and putting bets down if you give it too early. So. Matt, you have kind of an interesting mix of not only coaching, but also handling all of the logistical elements that come with coaching and to allow a program to be successful. I mean, talk a little bit, because I think people, would be fascinated by just some of the stuff you dealt with. Before the show, we talked offline about just, getting the kids to Milwaukee for the first round of the tournament. What was that like? Video obviously has changed over the years of how people, view video, when they can access it. And even just kind of coordinating your work on the basketball side with all the other elements of the university, academic counseling and other things. Just kind of talk about the role that you play as a director of basketball operations.
Yeah, as a director of basketball ops, I mean, I wear an infinite number of hats, and I'm getting involved in so many different areas, and especially at a place like Yale, we have a much smaller coaching staff. I'm sure some of the places that Rafi's been, some of the coaches that Jason works with have more resources at their disposal. And so they might have a director of ops, they might have somebody that focuses on recruiting or scouting, they might have somebody that does video, they might have somebody that is graduate assistants or other support to help out their coaching staff. For us at Yale, we have a head coach, 3 assistant coaches, and myself. That's about it. So I try to do as much as I can to alleviate some of the stresses and responsibilities of our coaches. And so that could be things that involve travel planning, coordinating hotels, meals, that could involve academics. And honestly, I don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about academics here, but, you know, and working on video, like you mentioned, Arnie, but there's really a variety of things, and not to mention trying myself to advance in my career and learn as much as I can about basketball, and trying to just really dive in headfirst to the game. But really it comes down to just being extremely organized, having great attention to detail, being a great communicator, trying to anticipate problems before they arise. So, you know, if our bus is 20 minutes late, even though I'm not driving it, that's still my fault and I got to deal with it. If coach didn't want tomato on his sandwich, but it comes with tomato on it, I better grab that sandwich before it gets to him and rip that tomato off, or I'm going to have to hear from it. So, you know, there's so many things, but as many of you know that have children or work with children, or young adults, I should say, there's just a lot of things that there's a lot of benefits to it, a lot of great perks of having the job, but it's also can be really stressful. And so my main responsibility and my goal is to be kind of in charge of making sure that everything is running smoothly, and just trying to help our team be at their best so our players can focus on school and basketball, our coaches can focus on coaching, and I try to, you know, handle everything else that I can.
Yeah, hats off to the Dobos for sure. They work so hard and always are at the behest of the coaches. And Jason and Rafi, we know sometimes the coaches cannot be as calm and rational as they need to be. They always need a place so that they can kind of release some of their energy. And often I've seen it go at the Dobos. So Matt, thanks to you. Like, what's your aspiration? Where do you hope this leads you to?
You know, I really want to be in a position where I can be a head coach one day at whatever level that may be, at the professional level, at the college basketball level, high school basketball level. I'm not in a rush to get to where I want to be. I've been very lucky to be around some awesome coaches, awesome programs, been lucky to live in different parts of the country, and looking forward to spending some time overseas in Israel this summer with the Maccabi team. So just really growing my variety of experiences in basketball and working with different people, because in this business, we got to be able to work with people. And so just as much as I'm learning from others, I'm learning about myself. And so one day I hope to be, you know, at that first seat on the bench, but I'm not in a rush to be the next, you know, youngest head coach to coach at this school or that school. And I'm just really lucky to be where I'm at right now.
You're just really special, Matt. I could tell you that. Now, Jason happens to be an agent for coaches, so I'm sure you two know each other well. But I still get calls, Jason, for people who say, "Well, I want to be a general manager. I want to be a head coach." What advice do you give people like Matt, who's clearly on a great path? And I can see Rafi's also on a path, and he's decided to add a little more dimensionality in a different way to his path. What do you tell up and comers what to do? How do they get to have you represent them soon?
A really good question, and it's a really good question. When somebody comes to me, so if Matt came to me right now and said, "Jason, I need an agent, work with me," I would say, unfortunately, Matt, I'm not going to work with you yet because you're not a head coach candidate. And what that means is somebody who's a decision maker on the Division I level, in this case, an athletics director, needs to look at you and say, this individual is ready to be a head coach. And so that lends me to say, well, how do you become whatever it is you want to become? If you want to be a Division I head coach, an NBA head coach, an NBA GM, you have to look at the path that those individuals that are in that position today took to get there. And you can look at the average Division I head coach and see that, first and foremost, they probably have at least 10 to 15 years of actual coaching experience in the Division I level. The majority of first-time Division I head coaches were at some point an assistant at the high major level. So even if you are an assistant at Yale, you're probably not going to get the Syracuse job before, right? So how do you get the Syracuse job? Well, most of the time you're a mid-major assistant. So there's a path that you need to take. And the other thing is, and everybody knows this in sports, it's a very incestuous industry. Everybody knows everybody. It's relationship based. And so not only do you have to follow parallel paths, you need to be building your own brand. You need to be building your resume and creating value that you can sell to somebody. And at the same time, you need to be building your Rolodex, because oftentimes when somebody's looking for somebody in a job, think about when you hire somebody at a company, you know somebody that knows somebody, hey, I need to fill this position. Do you have a recommendation? That's usually how it works. And so it seems sometimes a little bit arbitrary and capricious, but the reality is that the stronger your resume and the stronger your network, the better chances that you're going to have an opportunity to get the position that you're interested in. And then it's perseverance. I mean, I represent a lot of coaches. I represent one of the best mid-major coaches in the country right now, had a phenomenal season and has gone on 3 interviews in the last 2 weeks, hasn't been able to get a job. And I have to tell him consistently, your opportunity will come. The more interviews you go on, the better you get at them. Eventually, you're going to land it. And this is somebody you would say, like, how are they not a Division I head coach in the Power 5 yet, right? And that just, Arnie knows it. He's been in the business for a long time. That's just how it is, right? It's create more opportunities for yourself, and you'll get lucky eventually.
But you know, Jason, I'm gonna use that as a segue, because you and I did work at one time with a coach, and the one element that you left off of your discussion, this is for you and everybody else. We talked about, you know, representing the coaches, but the search agencies have become huge at this point.
Yep.
And whether you can kind of line up with in a favorable way with, and I'm not going to name the names, but we all know who the lead players are in the agency world right now. How important is that in terms of the influence that those agents have with the athletic directors and decisions being made?
It's important. So the majority of searches right now, especially at the high major level, are being done by search firms. And so that's where, number one, having a good agent that has a relationship with those individuals helps. Those people can help get a candidate to the table. They will not make the decision on who gets hired, but they can make a decision on who the pool of people that are interviewing for the job is. And so they are in a lot of ways the gatekeeper. And some of them have no prior experience in coaching. One does, who I actually like, who is a member of the tribe by the name of Eddie Fogler, who I'm sure many of you recognize, former head coach at Vanderbilt in South Carolina.
And one of our Maccabi coaches. Eddie was one of our Maccabi coaches.
Yeah, so Eddie he's a former coach. He just ran the Missouri search, which ended yesterday with Dennis Gates, right? So when he sits down and interviews the coach, he can actually ask them questions about X's and O's and other things. Most of the search firms are executives. They're having conversations about leadership and organizational behavior, but they're not going to know whether or not this guy knows how to coach the pick and roll. But that's not also their job either, right? Part of their main purpose is plausible deniability. They can get a group of people together. They can have conversations when the AD can't have a conversation with a sitting head coach. And so that's how the sausage is made in this industry, unfortunately. And so you need to be proactive and work on your relationships with those people. You need to have good representation to be able to have those conversations. And, you know, most of these, there's a reason why Todd Golden lost in the NCAA tournament and the next morning was the head coach at Florida. And Matt McMahon at Murray State became the head coach at LSU the next day. That was done a week before. And it's because they had an agent, there was a search firm, that process was wrapped up and the contract was signed even before they walked into the NCAA tournament.
Okay, let me just say, I want to go to Steven Jackson here because there's some things coming through on the chat, if that's okay, Arnie.
Yeah, go on. There's some great questions on the chat.
Steven, if I distill your whole comment, and Matt, you're in the Ivy League, but I'm sure all of you have a opinion. Does not having scholarships, is it going to diminish the ability for the Ivy to compete in general and for athletes in the future moving forward?
Well, I mean, the Ivy League has stuck with their traditional model for them for a long time. And I don't see them changing that anytime soon. And just like I think maybe Rafi was saying earlier, like you got to be able to adjust with the times. And as coaches, you know, the best indicator for us as far as how we're going to be able to compete, especially with regards to recruiting, comes with our success. And we've been very lucky that we've had great success here at Yale. And so we're going to continue to attract really talented young men for our men's basketball team that want to get the best education in the world and also want to play for a chance to make the NCAA tournament. So, you know, as far as the scholarship piece goes, for us, you know, there are some obstacles, but we do a ton of work beforehand to understand how to overcome some of these. So for example, we're not going to start recruiting a student athlete until we've seen their transcript. So we're not going to even waste our time trying to say fall in love with a kid or their family until we know that they're, you know, qualified to even get into Yale, because we don't have a say in admissions. Admissions tells students if they can get in or not. So that's one example. Another example, we do financial aid reads with our families. And so, you know, if there's a young person whose family comes from a low income background and they're going to be getting a full slate of financial aid and they're going to be paying little to no tuition, then it's why not get the best education that money can buy and have a chance to compete and play at a high level. You know, so if it's a kid that's going to pay somewhere in the middle, maybe they need that full scholarship to play at another university. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it, but ultimately when it comes down to it, we're working with young people and families that they got to understand the big picture. And it's not just the 4 years that they're here at Yale, but it's the 40 years beyond that. And we feel like we are going to put young people in the best possible position to have success for the rest of their life, and for their children and their grandchildren to have success for the rest of their life. And so in most cases, we work with families and young people that understand that big picture and want to be able to do that at a pretty unique place.
Hey, Donna, let me ask if before we kind of start to close out here, Rafi, I want to ask you a question that was in the chat from a fellow Tulane alum who was a number one player, tennis player at Tulane. But the question in the chat is, when you look at NIL, could it potentially hurt kind of the brotherhood and sisterhood and the closeness of a team if in fact, you know, different players might be getting different amounts through NIL?
Well, first of all, Lisa, roll wave. And if you're in New Orleans next week, we'd be happy to have you at the Jewish Coaches Breakfast at Tulane Hillel. But to answer the question, is there the potential for that? Yes. I mean, but there's also potential for other factors to tear apart a locker room. I think in situations where only one player is earning and it's not a team-based project, community-based project, or there isn't opportunities presented at the university for everyone to kind of get involved, I think there's more potential there. The things that Jason was talking about, where you're creating sort of an ad hoc agency for the whole athletic department to really get their fair market value, I think that's the real positive stuff long term. Will the number one player earn more than the number 10 player? Most likely, but that's life, right? For some of these athletes, you know, their earnings potential that stems from their athletic ability will, you know, disappear when they graduate. They may not play professionally. It may be, I won't say a flash in the pan, but they may have a 4-year window to capitalize on that. And I think an underrated aspect that we haven't really discussed in NIL is, while doing all of this, you're also teaching the student athletes some real entrepreneurial skills. You know, marketing, you know, whether it's the pottery stuff, you know, marketing your own products, or just marketing yourself, whether it's, you know, selling NFTs, doing commercials, you know, advertising for a brand. You're really teaching these kids life and business skills. And at the end of the day or end of the year, they're going to have to pay taxes on all those earnings. So life is going to come at you fast. And I think it's an opportunity to throw some life lessons in there earlier than they would have learned otherwise.
Great comments. There is, guys, there's so much that we could cover tonight. Jason, I so wanted to ask you about Athletic Director U, because I've seen some of that, and it's amazing to see the professional development work that you're doing with, with administrators and others, and that's such an important area. But we are up against the hour here, and really want to thank you. We want to get your picks though, as Donna has been promoting here for the show. So who's gonna win the championship in New Orleans a week from Monday?
I'd like to see Gonzaga finally get over the hump. That's my pick.
I get that. I totally get that for sure. Zags, not Zonas, wherever you are. Silverboard. Okay.
All right, Matt, what do you got?
I agree with Jason. I would love to see Gonzaga win it all, but selfishly, because we lost to Purdue and I just know how talented they are, I would love to see them go all the way. I also have a former player of mine who I coached at prep school, currently plays for Texas Tech, and selfishly again would love to see them go far. But it's been an incredible tournament so far, so I'm really excited to see what this weekend and next weekend at the Final Four has for us.
It's not fair to have to defend a 7'4" center, is it? That's pretty tough.
No, not at all.
Rafi, what do you think?
Well, I was a little biased. I had originally picked Auburn and Coach Pearl to win it all. So moving on from that, I would say either my former boss, Coach Musselman at Arkansas, or we have a Tulane transfer who is there at Villanova now, who we recruit when I was there, Caleb Daniels. So I would love to see Villanova, Arkansas. I also, being in the American Conference when I was at Tulane, I got a soft spot for Coach Sampson. I love watching those Houston teams, and I really think that they could give Arizona some trouble. And, after that game, all bets are off.
You know what I love hearing? It's what you said, Jason, is that the power of connection, right? There are all these relationships. Everybody's got a relationship interest, but we cannot leave, Arnie, if we also don't pick who we think is going to be the champion on the women's side. Shame on us for not having a women's coach tonight, because there is another tournament happening concurrently, and there's another champion that's going to be crowned. And as I said, I watched all the games last night, and I thought they were amazing. So, Jason, why don't we start with you? Who do you like on the women's side?
I am very biased. I represent Kevin McGuff at Ohio State, so I'm rooting for the Buckeyes.
They look good. I really like their number 4. I think she's a really, really good player. Incredibly great speeds, got a great eye. I like them. I think they got a shot. Okay, Raf, what do you got?
I'm also a little biased with our former girls Under Armour athletes, Paige Beckers and AZ Fudd. I think UConn's healthier now than they were a few months ago, so I'm going UConn.
Is it AZ? Is that what her name is?
Yeah, AZ Fudd.
She looked fantastic last night. Paige did not, but AZ looked great. I've never seen her play. I was very impressed. But,
they've dealt with a lot of injuries this year. They're finally healthier, so I'm pulling for them.
Well, Gino's been a great help to me in my career, so I have to say I'm a Gino fan. But I don't know. I like to see the women's game open up even more, so I'd like to see a different champion. Sorry, Gino, and sorry, Rafi. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Well, as a Badger myself, I'm gonna have to go the opposite of Jason. I'll just take anybody except for the Buckeyes. Okay, so no offense to Jason, but anybody except for the Buckeyes.
The Big Ten is in the Sweet 16, so you're gonna have to pick. Right?
There you go. And of course, Steven says go Stanford again, and Eugene said, "How could we not pick St. Peter's?" You're right. How could we not pick St. Peter's? But then again, how could we? But I love this fact, and I think all of our basketball guys will appreciate this. The entire budget for St. Peter's is about $1.5 million. It is less than the assistant coaching salaries at Kentucky. Hello, right? Although NIL can change that. Maybe we can pay all those St. Peter's kids so much money, they'll elevate how much money's coming into the team. With that, I want to thank everybody for coming. We will be back in, are we coming back in 2 weeks, Mackenzie and Arnie?
Yeah, we're working on it. We're working on that.
Anybody has any, and I wanted to welcome Jackie. Jackie's new to us, she said, and we always talk to just people, Jewish athletes, Jewish owners, anyone who's Jewish involved in the world of sports. The mishpacha comes together, we talk, we ask questions, we laugh, we stay, we have an after party, we have a good time. We feel better because we know each other. So thank you so much. Jason, really appreciate it. Rafi, really appreciate it, and good luck to you. And Matt, good luck to you. You guys are on a great.
Donna, before you close it, we got to say, everybody on the Zoom, if you're anywhere in the area or want to come down to New Orleans next weekend. The JCA breakfast is going to be awesome on Saturday. Donna actually is going to be there this week.
I will be
as a star for an event with John Cohn, athletic director of Mississippi State. So that'll be fun. But the following weekend, April 2, come down to New Orleans. Jason, I'd ask you if you got free tickets for everybody for the Saturday, but maybe not. So, but come down to New Orleans, whether you want to go to the games or not, you'll have a great time.
Awesome. We hope to see everybody next week. So take care.
Take care.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.